As Lilly followed Lupina through the winding forest trails, she took notice that the wolves had long since left her line of sight. She was unsure whether Lupina still knew where they were, or if her code was programmed to always know where wolves were. It didn't matter all too much to Lilly, as the hunting tutorial was made very easy this way, though the one thing she would complain about was how much time it took to actually hunt something. The hunting mechanic currently felt a little too realistic to be implemented into a game. Most games would make such tasks to be more focused on fun rather than realism to make the player want to continue playing the game instead of making them think it was just another chore. It was currently about an hour after they had met, and they were still tracking what Lupina said to be their lunch. Lilly was starting to get bored and confused, but just as she was about to say something, Lupina stopped and gestured at Lilly to kneel down. She listened to the gesture, then turned to look where Lupina was looking. In the distance, through the trees, was a four-legged creature with tan fur and tree branch-like horns. It reminded Lily of a deer, but it had other features that told her otherwise. On top of its typical deer-like features, it also had smaller spike-like horns along its spine and had streaks of white within its fur. Um, Lupina, what is this? Lily whispered. This is a Shiverian deer. It is native to the eastern side of Mount Shivering, Lupina whispered in response. Lily kneeled there with a confused look on her face as she tried to process the information that what she saw in front of her was indeed a deer, though Lupina took her confusion a different way. Do you not know how to hunt, apprentice? Although Lily was confused why she brought this fact up, it was indeed true that she didn't know how to hunt. In response, she just slightly shook her head so as to not startle the deer. Lupina smiled. Well then, you'll learn from the best there is. The first thing you want to do is take a note of your environment. Most animals have a good sense of smell, meaning you want to approach from the direction that the wind is blowing. As she explains this, she starts to slowly shuffle herself through the trees and around the deer, but never gets any closer. This is so that they don't smell you, because if they do, they'll run away. Next, you want to try and figure out where one of its vital organs are. The brain or heart is usually the best bet. After saying that, Lily had a confused look on her face, showing the fact that she didn't understand why they were targeting a vital organ. Lupina saw this confusion on her face, then continued with an explanation as to why. If you hit a vital organ, they will die faster. This has multiple benefits, the main one being that you do not need to search for your prey again, the second one being you finished up your work faster. After saying that, Lupina looked in the direction of the deer. After a second passed, a thin spike of red ice appeared from the ground and impaled the deer in the head. There was no struggle from it. Instead, you could see the blood of it start to drip down the spike it was impaled on. Lupina then stands up and says at a normal volume, that is how you successfully kill your prey when you've caught up to them. If this is how you hunt prey, then why don't you hunt humanoids like that as well, considering you call that hunting your prey as well? Lupina thinks for a moment after hearing Lily's valid question. What I want out of each is different. The deer is for food and is a necessity, so I don't want it to get away so easily nor harm it too much. Though for people, I want them to know who I am. I want them to tell their friends and post it on social media. Lupina says the part about hunting people with a sort of insane stain in her words. Yet Lily brushes it off without thinking of it. The two of them then walk over to the deer and Lupina melts the ice spike that had impaled the deer. She then picked up the deer by the front legs and hoisted it over her shoulder so that its back end was still on the snow, but it could be pulled with relative ease. She then gestured at Lily to follow her, and she started heading in a seemingly random direction. Lily, of course, followed Lupina. The two of them walked for a while before Lily spoke up with questions. Lupina, where are the wolves? Probably with their families. They listen to me, help me hunt, and sometimes just come to stay with me. They are not like a dog who will always listen to me, Lupina explained. Also, where are we going? You have yet to tell me the destination, just that you want me to follow you. Where else would one go when they've got the ingredients for lunch? They would go to home to prepare the food. After saying that, Lupina looked up towards the sky. Though it seems you'll be treated to a perfect supper cooked by yours truly. After hearing this, Lily didn't think much about it since one can not taste when in a video game setting. Though, at the mention of good food, Lily started to feel the emptiness in their stomach. It had been at least a good few hours since she logged into the game, or at least that was how it felt like. Although she had been having a decent amount of fun, something was feeling off, but she couldn't tell what it was. It was if she was looking at a painting that was missing the one thing that would tie the painter's masterpiece together. Lily, Lupina said loudly at to the entranced Lily. Ah, sorry, Lupina. What was it you wanted? We are here. Lily looked up to see a cave in the wall of a cliff. Inside the cave were glowing lights, but she couldn't see much farther in as obstacles were in the way. You live in a cave? Lupina then looked at Lily like she was crazy. Yes, have you not heard the stories about me? She said, slightly enraged. Lily, sensing she stepped on a landmine, quickly tried to undo her misstep. Of course not. I just assumed that someone as grand as you would live in a mansion befitting the title of the Great Ice Witch. Lupina's demeanor softened, telling that she was content with that answer. I suppose you have a point. If anyone were to hear of someone as great as me, they would assume that they just called their place a cave out of humility rather than actually living in a cave. She then turned back towards the cave and started walking within. Lily quickly noticed just how highly Lupina thought of herself, for the first room of the cave upon entering was her treasure room. It was a room filled with chests that she assumed contained trinkets and treasures. The next room that they had to pass was Lupina's bedroom, which was unusually normal. On one end of the room was a bed that was placed a few feet in front of the center of the wall with a wardrobe, potted plant, and table against the wall opposite of the entryway. On the other end of the room was a velvet couch and chair with a golden frame, along with a desk and chair and a bookshelf. There was also two red carpets, one for each side of the room. Why don't you take a seat over there? Lupina said, gesturing to the couch. I'll have the venison ready in around 30 minutes. Saying that, she left through the hallway opposite of the entryway. Since it was a cave, there were no doors, so her room was open to the elements, yet it was still rather warm. She sat around in the room for around 40 minutes before Lupina walked in the room with a plate of still steaming food. When Lily had the plate in her hand, she saw a cut of deer meat that looked to have pieces of nuts mixed in within the meat. On the side was a mixture of an assortment of mushrooms and potatoes. As Lily took a bite, the flavors practically exploded in her mouth. It was that good. This is delicious. How did you make it? Lily asked between bites of the food. I told you I would cook a perfect supper. It's primarily stuff I scavenged throughout the forest. The nuts mixed through the meat came from the trees and other plants. Same with the spices I used in the entire dish. The potatoes are a similar idea, but I got the wolves to help me find them buried underneath the snow. The mushrooms grow anywhere and everywhere. The main is knowing which ones are edible, as well as which ones taste good. A lot of practice is put into these kinds of meals, Lupina happily explained. It wasn't long before Lily finished her plate of food, still hungry for more. Lupina noticed this, so she went and grabbed Lily another plate, which was eaten only slightly slower than the first plate of food. Once both of them were finished eating and the dishes were cleaned up, Lupina and Lily took up a more business-like demeanor as they discussed exactly what Lupina was going to teach Lily. So, Miss Apprentice, what kind of survival skills do you have? Lily thought long and hard before coming to a conclusion. The only survival-like skill I have is some dueling skills. Otherwise, I've never had to scavenge or hunt for myself before. Can you at least cook? Lupina asked, but the lack of response from Lily told her everything she needed to know about the situation. Okay, so if I am to understand this correctly, you have no survival skills, basic skills, or any knowledge on magic usage. Lily nods, almost as if it was less real if she didn't speak it out loud. All right then, a challenge worthy of my talent. Then do you have any kind of weapon you prefer or perhaps want to learn? Lupina asked. Lupina thought back to the character creator, and there was a section for choosing the weapons she was good with. I'm pretty sure that I'm good with a rifle and a one-handed sword. Lupina starts to think for a bit before looking out the cave's entrance. It was starting to get rather dark outside, which would make traversal harder if it got much darker. With this, Lupina got an idea. Alright then, I'll see if I have some sort of weapon that you can use. Though, I have one thing that'll be your first lesson. You should go home for the night, then come back here in the morning tomorrow. Your first task is to do that without help. Alright, I think I can do that. Where do you live? Lily tried to remember what the woman earlier had said before remembering the name of her town. I live in the town of Frozen Alps. Then head in that direction, and you should reach it in around 30 minutes. Lupina said, pointing in a direction. Thanks. After their farewells, Lily started to head in the direction that Lupina had pointed out. It did take around 30 minutes to get back, and by the time she was back, the sun had started to set and was casting a crimson light that reflected off the snow. It did take her a bit to find her igloo, but once she did, she entered it immediately and sat on her bed. She even tried several times to log out of the game. She tried to open a UI menu panel, think about logging out, say logging out loud, and snapping her fingers, but nothing worked. She then thought that maybe falling asleep would log her out of the game, so she laid down on her bed and pulled the covers over her body. It didn't take her long to fall asleep, as that day had been physically taxing. She had wandered through ice and snow for hours as well as narrowly avoided death. She also became the apprentice of an obviously violent individual who seemed to be more egotistical than evil. Though the one thing that stands out against the rest was the delicious yet simplistic food that was easily better than anything she could have prepared with all the modern tools of cooking she was accustomed to. Though she did seem to overlook one very important thing. That thing being that one cannot taste within a VR system, and the one they were prototyping certainly didn't have a function that did that.